On today's episode, we are talking about the Star Wars Rebels recap. It was pretty awesome with that finale. A lot of stuff to get into with that. Also, going to talk about the future of Ahsoka specifically and the last 5 minutes of the finale and what that means for the future of Star Wars. We're going to get into the Last Jedi novelization. I'm almost done with that thing. Tons of awesome stuff in there. Going to be talking about all of that, plus going over your questions, of course. This is Nerds Talk Star Wars. Let's do this thing. What is up, everybody? You're hanging out here with me on a Sunday night. It's just that casual time of the week where we just reflect on all things Star Wars. This is, of course, Nerds Talk Star Wars. I'm flying solo like Han himself today. James was supposed to do the show with me, but his computer's all messed up, so he's not going to be able to do it. And I've been getting a hold of some really cool people that are going to get on the show as guests, maybe even in just segments or full-time guests. I reached out to the Wayward Jedi. He's just really busy. And guys, if you want me to go collaborate with somebody, what you need to do is go hit them up on Twitter and let them know that you want that to happen, because I have been reaching out to people. But look, I know as a content creator and someone who does a ton of other things, you can just get really busy and a lot of this stuff can just get lost in your feed. So if this is something you guys want to see happen, you're going to have to go out there and sort of, talk about it and try to get people to reach out and do some stuff with me, because I think it would be pretty cool. Now, I also want to mention that we do have a Patreon. I just launched the Patreon the other day. It's sort of a big deal for us. So if you like the kind of stuff we're doing on the channel, go check out the Patreon. It's got 3 different levels. The $1 level, which gives you just early access to videos, and a monthly Q&A specifically with Patreon people where we can really dive in and answer your questions. The $5 level is a really dope level where you'll get access to sort of behind the scenes stuff and vlogs that I'm going to drop occasionally, so that you know what's going on and what we are doing as a company and as a YouTube channel. But also there is the $100 level, which I know that sounds crazy, but when you check out what is on the $100 level, I think that you'll really appreciate it. If you got a ton of loot and you want to be really involved with the future of what we're doing, check that out. It's limited, and I think you'll see why. But in either case, what I want to do here is I want to get into the first part of the show, which is, of course, the Star Wars Rebels recap. Now, I thought the Rebels finale was absolutely fantastic, and I wanted to go in depth with it here with you guys, talking about what I liked about it, maybe some things that I wasn't crazy about, and different things like that. So basically, I really liked the finale. I thought it was cool. It was interesting because it sort of just wrapped up a story. It really felt almost singular, like it was just its own episode to really wrap up the season, and maybe not the entire series. And that is something I saw people talking about online. They were like, well, it's not necessarily the best wrap up to a complete series. And the more I watched it, because I've watched it twice now, I actually tend to feel that it really was. There was some things in there that were really exciting to me, but overall, I think the thing that I wanted to talk with you guys about was, I think this is how you do a really great Star Wars ending. So if you look, and this is something that Filoni said, there's a ton of stuff out there, by the way, of like Q&As that he did after the episodes, after what was going on, and he sort of broke down different things. He talks about how, like, if you watch the original trilogy and even the prequels, like, the heroes win. Like, the heroes win. Not a lot of people die. That's the Star Wars way. And so we all thought, simply because we don't see these characters, right, in the original trilogy, in Rogue One, during that time period, we had all thought, well, they're going to have to die or be taken off the board in some way. And I think they found really interesting ways to accomplish that. And they talked about how, Hera was in the Battle of Endor, how she has a son, and, Sabine went back to Mandalore, and just all of these different things. The Zeb and Callus ending I thought was really cool. They go check out Zeb's homeworld, his like secret homeworld, and they find out that Callus did not actually eliminate the entire race. I thought that was really cool. And so overall, I think this is how you do a good Star Wars ending. You wrap things up, you set stuff up, which we're going to get to in just a second here, but you also sort of have a happy ending. And look, I think that we sometimes underestimate the fact that this is sort of high fantasy for, kids, for the kids inside of us, and it's meant to be that kind of entertainment. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I also feel like the fans were treated with a lot of respect. So, like, the space whales thing, right? Like, if you would have told me, several seasons ago that the space whales were going to play a major role in thwarting the Empire, I honestly would have been like, what? I would have kind of been a little upset about that. But the truth is, the way they handled it was really, really treated with a lot of respect. It seemed to me to make perfect sense. And the way it was shot was really, really cool too. So I know that Dave sort of took a risk with that. But one of the things as a fan is like, well, that was set up before and they paid it off in this one. And it makes sense when you consider the character of Ezra, when you consider his powers and the way he has that special connection to living creatures and to animals and stuff with the Force. It actually makes a ton of sense that this would be his plan. And so, something that could have really not landed well, I think landed well because of the care and the respect that Dave and the entire cast and crew over there has for the show. And so they handled it really well. I think that's how you do a Star Wars ending. And I was very, very excited about it. Now, a couple of things that stood out to me, Thrawn and the Emperor. And I saw people talking about this online. They were like, well, hey, man, Thrawn is really wicked evil in this episode. And that's not really the way that he has been portrayed in the novel. That's not really the way that he was portrayed in the earlier seasons of Rebels. And so, give me one second. And so, I will say, I thought a lot about this, and I think because the Emperor was there and somehow sort of projecting himself, either force projecting or with some kind of technology, because the Emperor was there and sort of watching over this whole situation, I think that Thrawn had decided that he had to be a little more evil to sort of fit the mold for the Emperor. Remember, he goes to Coruscant and meets with the Emperor in the episodes before this. And I think whatever happened in that meeting, and obviously the failure of Governor Price and just the frustrating situation, I think that is what leads Thrawn to act the way that he did. Now, the Emperor himself, man, wow. What a crazy way to have Ezra Bridger and the Emperor play a significant role in the end of this series. And I love how the Emperor continues to want to have access to the world between worlds. Now, we're going to get into a fan question at the very end of the show from John Rosmierek. I hope I said your name right. I know you told me not to worry about it, but I really would like to pronounce it right. But about the world between world, Palpatine, Pelagus, and different things like that. But it's so cool that they continue to play off of this. I mean, this is a huge freaking deal, right? This world between worlds, that is a huge source of power, something that Palpatine would really, really want. And so he had the portion of the Jedi Temple rebuilt stone by stone, which I'm sort of scratching my head on like how that would even happen with the time frame that we're seeing in Rebels. But to have that moment and to have Palpatine get in there with Ezra and sort of be like, look, I built this. I'm really tempting you here with your family. You can literally go back and be with your family. And then that would have reset the timeline, and like Ezra wouldn't have interfered, and Palpatine would gain access to the room seemingly. And the way that Ezra denies that and destroys the temple, this really sacred thing, I thought was great. Also, very, very cool to note that Palpatine was shifting in between the Sheev and the Emperor, right? I mean, we've always thought, it's so interesting. As a fan base, there's always been this debate, like, was Palpatine always sort of ugly and hideous? And did he sort of mask himself with the Force so that he looked better? Because, we doubt that the lightning thing in Mace Windu literally scarred him like that. We're thinking, nah, he was probably ugly the whole time. And he hid that fact using the Force. Like a technique, I think they call it shining in fantasy. I could be wrong about that. But it would appear that is what happened there. Very, very interesting stuff, man. So I thought that was super hype. A very good way to end the season and the series. And of course, the 5 minutes at the very end, that's where it gets really, really crazy. And so that's what we're going to get into in this topic. But let me know in the comments section, guys, like overall, what did you think about the Rebels recap? I'm excited about it, but I want to know what you guys thought. Did you hear some of the criticisms out there? Do you agree that it was sort of a weaker series finale, but a good finale to a season? Or do you really think that it nailed it home? I really want to know what you guys think about that. So let's get into the future of Ahsoka. This is a sort of interesting topic right here. So essentially, guys, This Ahsoka character has been near and dear to a lot of Star Wars fans, man. We have really liked this character. And what's interesting about this character is it didn't start out this way. We did not like this character at first, man. She was considered annoying. Nobody really liked the way that she had interacted with Anakin, and she grew on us and grew quite literally as a character. I mean, not just in the physical sense, but like in the emotional sense, in a lot of other ways. And so I think this is one of the things that's really nailed by Dave Filoni and his whole crew. And so everybody was wondering, especially after the World Between Worlds episode, where's Ahsoka? What's going on with her? Like, what is up? In that last 5 minutes, which is beautifully narrated by Sabine, right? And she's remembering the words that Ezra says to her. I've always counted on you. I'm counting on you again. I'm always able to count on you. And she's thinking about this, reminiscing about it. And she has this like feeling, right? And so, what's interesting about Sabine is I don't think she's like a child of the Force or like particularly gifted with the living Force or the cosmic Force. But all beings have access to the Force, which is something that Kanan talks about. A lot of different people talk about this. Pablo's talked about this on Twitter. And the fact that Sabine, especially in the episodes where she's training with the Darksaber, showcases an affinity, at least partially for the Force and an understanding of it. And because part of those episodes is her opening up to the Force. She was closed off to it, and part of it is she opens up to it. And so she has this feeling and this connection to Ezra, which I think is romantic. You know what I mean? Like, I ship that couple all day. I want them to be together. I think that would be amazing. But she has this feeling, and she's narrating it. She says she thinks it's something else. And then we see Ahsoka arrive. And of course, she's wearing the white. She's got the staff. A lot of people made the joke of like Gandalf the White. It was Ahsoka the White, which is, hilarious and true. But I wanted to talk about what I think is going on with Ahsoka here and where I think the future of this is going to go. So, look, it's so cool that she's alive. But what this means is all throughout the time of the original trilogy and past Endor, Ahsoka was alive, but like not active as a Jedi. And so this brings up all sorts of questions, right? Like, what was she doing? Was Yoda aware? Was Ben aware? Were the Force ghosts aware? How does she play into the larger role of the Cosmic Force? Because the Cosmic Force is sort of like that will, right? It's that hand thing that sort of guides everything. And so the question is really like, why wasn't she active in trying to defeat Vader? Or did she perhaps know that Luke would be the one to do it? So I personally believe that she went into hiding, but after being exposed to the World Between Worlds, she sort of went about a different path. She's really trying to understand more passively what is going on with the Force itself. And so I think that she might have even had access to that room once again and had literally just been watching everything go down, right? And maybe she knew that Luke was going to be the one to turn Vader. Maybe she knew that in her heart of hearts. And, man, a lot of people in the fan base talk about the Luke Ahsoka meeting because these are two characters that kind of never gave up on Vader. I mean, Luke didn't really know that it was Anakin, but Ahsoka kind of never gives up on Anakin inside of Vader, right? And that's interesting. And Luke is the same way. And so those characters have that deep connection to Anakin Skywalker, to the Chosen One, to this virgins in the Force, to this crazy thing that happened. And so it is possible that we could see a scenario where they do meet or are at least aware of each other or something. And, Dave said when asked about it, yeah, I've got a plan for it, but it's not like totally figured out yet. So he doesn't want to say anything because he doesn't want to put himself in a box. So what I think is going on with Ahsoka is that she has just gained an amazing amount of knowledge about the Force. The white tends to indicate that maybe she's sort of left behind the gray and is truly light side once again. It sort of falls upon that side of the Force again. And that's pretty cool. And I think what's going to happen with her and Sabine, which I'm guessing is probably the next series, because if you're noticing, Filoni just keeps Ahsoka as sort of a through line for this whole thing, right? What I think is dope is Rebels is really about Ezra. Now it's about the crew, it's about the Ghost crew, but it's really ultimately about Ezra, which is just this kid, right? This kid from this planet that has this unique connection to the Force, very strong, incredibly strong. And I think what's going to happen in the next series is Ahsoka and Sabine, which, by the way, like, I'm so pumped about that team up. And I'm going to come back to that in a second, but I'm so pumped about it. I think they are obviously going to go searching for Ezra, and it's literally going to be this thing, the search for Ezra Bridger, right? But on the other side of that, you're going to have Ezra and Thrawn together, probably needing to work together in order to survive. And what I think is really cool is I think it's going to go out into the unknown regions. Now, I'm going to get into the Last Jedi novelization stuff, but there's this part in the novelization where Snoke is talking about different little bases that the Emperor had set up in the unknown regions, factories, bases, and stuff like that. And it gave me this vibe of Mass Effect where, like, you go out there and there are sometimes even military bases, citadel bases out in the middle of space. But because there's nobody reining them in, they go crazy. And there's, like, corruption and evil and really messed up stuff. And so I'd love to see that sort of stuff explored. And I think what's going to happen is Ezra and Thrawn are going to be sort of trying to survive doing their thing, maybe trying to figure out a greater cosmic secret. And then you have Ahsoka and Sabine searching for them, which is going to be so cool. And I hope that that's the next animated series. And real quickly, I want to say here too, there's this thing going on in the fan base. And look, everybody's aware of it, where certain fans feel like, okay, we're getting all of this sort of social justice stuff or identity politics stuff sort of pushed into Star Wars. And it has to do with, like, Rey and female characters and stuff like that. And I think that what Lucasfilm should do is look to the Sabine and Ahsoka situation as an example of how to properly do this, because I have a lot of friends, a lot of male friends that can't stand some of the female characters in the current saga, right? But they love Sabine and Ahsoka. And so, like, none of those people are inherently sexist or inherently just don't like female characters. That's not true. We want good characters. We want rich characters. We want well-developed characters. And it's a little bit unfair simply because the television show, you have so much more content. It's easier to get to know these characters. You spend more time with them. You get more attached to them. And you watch them grow in a better way. But when it comes to, like, Rey, when it comes to, like, Holdo, when it comes to Rose, some of these characters, I think that the proof is in the pudding. The reason a lot of people have problems with these characters is not because they're female, it is because they're weak characters. They're simply weak. And with Holdo specifically, I mean, she's not only is she sort of weak, I felt like she was really used as a plot device, as a contrivance. Her, like, secrecy or whatever was the reason that Poe decided to do his plan, and that's just crap. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not a fan of that. And I felt like Rose similarly, and Paige and those characters similarly used in a plot device, and we don't get to see them, like, A, struggle a lot, or B, go through trials and tribulations. And so I just wanted to say that because, honestly, every Star Wars fan that I know would be so pumped to watch Sabine and Ahsoka literally just do that show. And you're talking about two female characters, and we would be so into it. So I just want to sort of put that out into the fan base because I know things are sort of rocky right now. And I just wanted to talk about that because I think we need to have honest conversations about this in the fandom. We need to extend an olive branch to people that view things differently than we do. And you can't exist in an echo chamber. Like, just in general in life, you need to be able to have a conversation with people that don't necessarily agree with you, and then find some common ground. And I have seen some really respectful discourse in the comment section, and I've seen some not so respectful discourse. And so I think it just falls on each and every one of us to sort of go into these conversations with the right perspective. And look, we all love Star Wars, and people are flawed, man. People are flawed, but they can also come around. And you don't get people to see your perspective by putting up walls yourself and not hearing them out. And so I just wanted to say that briefly, but I'm really interested. What do you guys think about the future of Ahsoka? Because I am super pumped about it, but I want to know what everybody else thinks. Do you think that we're going to get that as the next series? Do you agree that it's going to sort of take that dynamic, the search for Ezra Bridger? And also, what do you think's going on with Thrawn and Ezra? I mean, that is one hell of a team up. I'm very excited to check that out, but I want to know what all of you guys think about that in the comment section below. All right, let's roll into our next topic because I'm rambling and we got to try to tighten this thing up. So, The Last Jedi novelization. It came out. It is amazing. I am not all the way through it, but man, is it dope. Jason Fry, incredible writer, does a great job with this book, and he's expanding a lot of things that people had problems with in the Last Jedi movie are sort of spelled out in a better way, in a more digestible way within the novel. So quickly, let me talk about Reylo, because obviously I'm considered one of these Reylo guys. You know what I mean? I don't know how this happened, by the way, but I like Reylo, so I'm not that pumped or pissed about it. But so the Reylo thing itself, it's interesting because I don't actually get as much of the romantic side as I was hoping to get. That might be them sort of playing those cards close to the vest, even in the novel. But there's interesting stuff going on. There's feelings from Kylo for sure. The mind melding of the two has really affected them both. I mean, I think it's why Kylo, feels such an attachment to her, knowing what she went through on Jakku. She was so alone. A lot of people were speaking to that in the comment section on some of my videos. I agree with you. It's interesting that you could say that Rey gets a lot of her power from Kylo. That was the bonus video that I dropped earlier today. So, you were probably gotten that. I talked about it on the Nerdy News Rundown a little bit. But yeah, that's pretty freaking interesting and a great explanation. And why wasn't that in the movie? Like, God, I think that it's just literally being sort of tone deaf to the fan base, because that was something everybody wanted to know about, and a lot of people would accept that explanation, and I think it would have done something to the fan base, but whatever, they didn't do it. It's kind of crazy. Luke as a character is very interesting. It's interesting to get in his mind, see where he is at, how broken he is, and then when he opens himself back up to the Force, crazy, just so cool, sort of messing with that. And I'm not at the end of the book yet, so I can't quite speak to how that whole situation goes down at the end. Looking forward to getting there. I'll say this. One of my favorite parts is the point of view chapter, or the part of the chapter from Snoke's perspective, when he's talking about how he rose to power, those bases that are out there in the unknown regions. That is some dope stuff, man. And I am really liking that. He literally is talking about one of the things, and I'm doing an in-depth video about this, so, you'll get more of this coming. But, like, Andy Serkis said, they asked him in interviews before the movie, do you think that Snoke is more powerful than Palpatine and Vader? And he said, absolutely. He has nearly unlimited resources. And everybody in the fan base was like, what do you mean unlimited resources? What you talking about, Willis? That don't make no sense. And the truth is, I think what he's referring to is Palpatine was aware that there was stuff in the unknown regions that granted more power and knowledge when it came to the Force. And Palpatine was trying to find those things, found a few of them, but Snoke had access to like all of them. That's, I think, what Andy Serkis was talking about. And so Snoke was out there sort of finding all of these like things to amplify his power and to make him like just stronger with the dark side. And the way he describes his power is so interesting. And just the way he perceives Rey, the way he perceives Kylo, very, very cool. So I know like there's two types of Star Wars fans when it comes to Snoke. They're like, I don't care. He died. Get it out of my face. And then there's the people that like salivate for more about him. And I'm probably in the latter. But I thought that was very, very interesting. But overall, the novelization is great. I highly recommend it if you have not read it. A lot of you have. I've noticed in the comments, a lot of you are going in on that. Oh, and by the way, I got something completely wrong during the week about the novelization, the junior novelization, right? And so people had brought up to me the differences between Ben Solo, Kylo Ren in both novels. I had assumed, wrongly, that they depicted Ben as like more kind and less dark in the junior novel. And that's not the case. Apparently it was way darker. And I did a little research on this. Apparently this is because the person that wrote the junior novel was not given a direct line to Ryan. And so Jason Fry and the extended novel was given a lot of like consideration, and he had a lot of communication with Ryan, but the junior novel was not the case. And so I think that's what happened. The person had to sort of draw their own conclusions. And also I think there's something about moral ambiguity, which is not great with kids, right? Like you want to know the bad guy, the good guy. And so that could have been part of that as well. So I want to know, though, let me know in the comment section, guys, about what you think when it comes to the Last Jedi novelization. Did you check it out? What do you think? Are you totally digging it? Are you not digging it so much? Please let me know. I'm very interested to hear your thoughts about the Last Jedi novelization. Also, If there's something specific from the novel you want me to talk about, as always, please drop a question in the comment section. More than willing to talk about what you want to talk about in next week's show. So drop a line and let me know what's going on with that. All right, let's get into some fan questions. I wanted to give plenty of time here to get into fan questions. We're doing okay on time. Probably going to go 5-10 minutes here. So the first question comes from Amanda D. Weiss, who has been really active in the comment section. Amanda, you're really awesome. I appreciate it. Her question is about Finn's sacrifice at the end of The Last Jedi. She wanted to know, would this sacrifice have worked? Would it have been in vain? Would she totally have killed everybody on Crate? And what's interesting is this is something that actually a lot of people are talking about online. It's been a major point of contention in the fan base, I feel. And I totally get it. It's an interesting thing. She says specifically, had to sacrifice himself, would the sacrifice be in vain? Wouldn't it have caused a massive explosion, killing everyone on Crate? Okay, so let me go into this a little bit here. I do not think that it would have killed everybody on Crate, especially the rebels. It would have killed a lot of Imperials, but not the rebels, because if that's a Death Star-like machine, right? I think part of the thing here is that massive thing, or what Poe calls the big-ass door. That thing's designed to take a lot of blasts, even direct blast itself. But because it's miniaturized Death Star tech, it was able to penetrate that shield. But if it were to just explode and not have all that power centralized, no, I don't think it would have done much damage to the blast shield, to the rebels, or really to the planet, because it's so miniaturized, right? So the question about Finn's sacrifice, like, would it have been in vain? It's really hard to say. Like, this is sort of a weird thing to speculate, right? But I will say this. A lot of people think that Rose made a really noble move by preventing that, and I completely disagree. There are some holes in the plot for The Last Jedi. In my opinion, one of those is Rose saving Finn. It makes no sense. By her doing that, she has literally made it so that the Imperials or the First Order will get into that base. She had no idea Luke Skywalker was coming. She had no idea that they were going to be saved. And so I think that sacrifice, it kind of makes no sense. Her love, which is literally the reason, she explains it and then kisses him and says, we're going to win by saving what we love, not killing what we hate. And so that line, which is kind of a nice sentiment, and look, I get it, in Star Wars, that's awesome, but that don't make no sense, Rose. You're gonna, because you love this guy, you're going to save him, and then literally put the entire resistance, which is the spark of hope for the entire galaxy, at risk. So personally, I don't like the Rose character. I felt like she was a contrivance of the plot. I mean, it was well acted. Like, I'll give that. Kelly Marie Tran, great actress. She's really cool. And inclusion's great. Inclusion's great. There should be more inclusion. But I just felt like, man, that character was not good, in my opinion. And so I felt like the sacrifice of Finn, would it have been in vain? It's really hard to say. I don't think it would have killed everybody, though. And I will say that, like, Rose doing that made no sense to me. I thought that was a weaker part of the plot myself. But everybody let me know in the comment section what you think about that. Do you agree, or do you think that sacrifice would have been in vain and that Rose doing that perhaps saved them? Because that's kind of a fair argument. I can see where you're going with that. All right, so let's get into the next fan question. This one comes from Laura LaPlante, and she is talking about the Rian Johnson trilogy, and specifically about it going into different unknown places, okay? Let's see if I can pull up her question right here. Okay, so she says, it's being said that Rian's new trilogy coming in 20 whenever isn't supposed to take place in the Star Wars galaxy, that he's creating a whole new galaxy with a new set of rules, ideas, etc., and so forth. My question is, how do you feel about this prospect? Are you excited about a whole new galaxy with a whole new set of stories, especially coming from someone as controversial as Rian right now, or would you prefer the powers that be stay within the Star Wars galaxy and take it into the future and dive more into the past, something which they've already done? Well, first of all, Laura, thank you so much for the question. I think that that's a cool interesting topic to talk about. And right off the top, let me just say this. I love The Last Jedi. I love Ryan Johnson, but I would not be pissed if they canceled that trilogy. And it's like this, man. Like I really like I relate this to what's going on in the DC universe. So I'm a big fan of Zack Snyder. Okay, I'm a big fan of Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, the theatrical movie. No, just no. But the extended cut, which was Zack's vision more or less, is actually a much better movie. And I'm a big fan of the darker, grittier version of the DC heroes. Having said that, after Batman v Superman, if the fan base, considering where the fan base was at, if they would have decided to go with a different director than Zack for Justice League, I would have personally been okay with it because I'm not blind to what's going on in the fan base. And so I don't put like my personal enjoyment over what is a big outcry within the fan base. And so considering what happened with The Last Jedi, and let's just be real, man, The Last Jedi changed things. It showed that Star Wars was not bulletproof. It massively divided the fan base. It's an interesting thing that's going on right now. And so, considering that, I wouldn't be pissed if they canceled that trilogy. Now, specific to your question, as far as the new galaxy, I'll be honest with you, I haven't heard that it's going to be in a new galaxy. What I heard and what was in the press release was it is going to explore a part of Star Wars that has never been explored in the lore before. Never been explored in the mythos or the lore of Star Wars before. And so that could mean any number of things. Any number of things. That could be referencing the physical location that it explores. It could be referencing the themes that it's going to explore, the time period. It could be a new galaxy, as you said. My gut tells me it's going to be in sort of the unknown regions, and I think it could deal with something surrounding what Snoke was doing out there, the Chiss, different things like that. I'd be all for that. As far as going into a new galaxy itself, like I'm completely okay with that. Here's the thing. You can't stray too far from what makes Star Wars Star Wars. And the problem is when you start to talk about Ryan and doing new things like this, it's triggering people because of how they feel about The Last Jedi. And so they're like, man, like newness, Ryan turning things on its head. Like I'm not super into that. Now, personally, I think he's the perfect guy for that job. And I think some of the stuff he did in The Last Jedi was completely in a line with what we're used to in Star Wars. I think it was good stuff. But, that's sort of my explanation. So personally, I would not mind that. My big wish is to go back to the Old Republic. I want to see the Old Republic era. I want to see Dawn of the Jedi. I want to see that kind of stuff. That's what I really want. I think Dan and Dave are going to do that with their films. So I don't think that's what Ryan's doing. If Ryan goes into sort of the unknown regions, see, it's a trilogy, right? So that's interesting because if it follows the trilogy line and has like a first, second, third act, and he's doing it completely himself, I think it would solve a lot of the like connective tissue issues that people believe is there. So I'd be down. And if you wanted to go into a whole new galaxy, I'm totally fine with that. You know what I mean? As long as the Force is there, as long as there's some semblance of good and evil that we're pretty aware, it's right there. We know what's good, we know what's evil. As long as you have maybe some Force users, some bounty hunter spaceships that used Western kind of feel to it, as long as we have the themes and the feelings of Star Wars, I'm completely okay with Ryan going anywhere in his new trilogy. So that's sort of my answer for that. But thank you, Laura, as always, for giving me the question. Also, I love your name, Laura LaPlante. That's such a cool name. And I say it like a Bond villain. Anyways, let's get into the last question of the day. This comes from my main man, John Razmirek. I'm just going with that, John. I don't know if that's the right way to pronounce it, but that's what I'm going with. And thanks for being so cool about me being terrible with pronouncing names in the comment section. So John's question has to do with the world between worlds. Here's his question. It says, about time travel or going to the world between worlds. Who can use it? Also, what events can be altered? Is it possible as well that this is what Palpatine was talking about with Anakin about Darth Plagueis? This is a very interesting idea. So one of the things that I was wondering about this was like, why does this even exist? Why does this even exist? Well, the cosmic force, right? This all has to do with the cosmic force and the living force. The cosmic force is the will. The cosmic force is like the godlike side of the force, right? The thing that's interfering, pushing things together. It's the thing that has positioned Kylo and Rey as the sides that will balance the force. So, but what's interesting about that room is that it really looks like it was made for beings that are still within the living force to go in there and sort of exist in the cosmic force and perceive reality. So, what is the purpose of the room? I don't know. But if it's a Jedi temple that allowed access to it, and you need to be a Jedi to get into it. And what really was interesting to me is I think the reason Ezra was able to enter is because of his connection to the living force, because of his connection to the Loth Wolves and the place itself, right, on Lothal, like his connection to the planet. And one of the things that Dave Filoni said that was really interesting is he said, look, I don't think there's anything particularly special going on Lothal that is that much different that's going on anywhere in the galaxy. If the Force is truly binding everything together, then this is happening all over the place all at once. All of the planets have this access to it. But the difference is we've never seen a character like Ezra, who has his abilities and his powers, do like mess with this, right? And so that's what makes it specifically cool and gives him the access to it. So what is the purpose? Well, I'd like to believe this is tied into what happened to Ahsoka. Ahsoka is playing a very special role in the Force itself, and I think that the purpose of the room is so that someone from the living Force can manipulate things, and manipulate's a weird way to say it, but can access, not only the knowledge, but, physically affect what is happening in the living Force. And so, specifically about Palpatine, like he wanted this thing bad. And so I think that if you consider like the kind of guy that Palpatine was, what he really wanted to reshape reality. What's really cool to me is there are lines in the Tarkin novel about him saying he wanted to reshape reality. Reshape reality. And, we're like, how is that even possible? You can't do that with the Force. Like, that's not how the Force works. Sheev, you're crazy. But then when you consider this and how crazy this would be to have access to different timelines, to see different things, he could literally reshape reality. And so perhaps that's what it's for. Maybe it's for reshaping reality if things were to get really crazily out of balance, if there was really dark stuff happening, if the cosmic force itself was at risk, maybe someone from the living force could get in there, adjust things, and make that happen. So that's sort of my speculation. Now, when it comes to Palpatine talking about, or rather John talking about maybe this having to do with Plagueis, Plagueis was so wise. Plagueis was so wise and knew so much about the galaxy. I'm sure he was aware of the room. I'm sure he was. In fact, I'm sure, pardon me, that Palpatine got access to, or rather knew about the room because of the knowledge that was passed down to him from Plagueis. But I don't think Plagueis was ever able to get access to it. I tend to believe it was a light side thing. You needed to be light side to get in there. What's so interesting to me is that there's this paradox going on here. Actually, it's a Zen philosophy that the more you try to control something, the less control you have of it. And so there's this beautiful parable in Zen where you stick your hand in the water, but if you try to grab it, if you try to grab hold of it, take the water, experience it in that way with your control, and you take your hand out of the water, there's nothing in there. You got no water. So the only way you can experience the water is to put your hand in it and just flow with it and just experience the water. And so the Sith, interestingly, they take the control of the Force to the next level and they try to bend it and break it to their will. And by doing so, they actually lose the control that they are seeking. So like the Sith are always trying to be immortal, right? They want to live forever. They want to have ultimate power. They want to do all those things. But the Jedi are the ones that achieve this training through the Shaman of the Wills, the Force Priestesses, and the Cosmic Force. They actually achieve what the Sith are seeking in the immortality. And I think it has to do with that Zen philosophy. Don't grab the water, just feel the water. And so did Plagueis know about it? Probably. Did he use it to manipulate things and to create Anakin? That would be super cool. But I think it sort of goes against the baseline philosophy of the Force, the baseline idea here of what the Force is and how Force users are able to wield its power. So that's just kind of my opinion. But thank you, John, for the question, as always. All right, guys, we're going to wrap things up here. One more time, I want to just say we launched this Patreon. It's brand new. I'm going to be putting content up there. It seriously, it would be such a big help. Even if you can only do $1 a month, it would really help us out here as we try to grow things. I'm sure you've been noticing on the channel, I'm doing more things. I'm reaching out. I'm trying to grow this thing into a bigger presence online, giving great content to you guys and getting you more involved. Seriously. So if that's something you're interested in, consider supporting. I'm going to put the link in there, okay? Now, as I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Oh, geez, I should have had my hand on the button here. All right.